But while old empires destroyed themselves in the trenches of World War I, New York was quietly preparing a financial takeover of the world. In just 4 years, the United States achieved what others needed centuries to build, from a distant observer to the world's leading creditor. How did blood in Europe turn into a golden rain on Wall Street? And why, without this war, would the United States have never become a superpower? Today, we break down the mechanics of the fastest economic rise in history. At the dawn of the 20th century, the United States was not yet the global superpower we know today. Yes, the nation was growing fast. Railroads connected the coasts, factories roared, and great cities like New York and Chicago pulsed with the energy of progress. But behind that industrial rhythm, America was still a debtor nation. Most of the capital came from Europe, from the banks of London, the financiers of Paris, and the investors of Berlin. They funded America's railroads, its ships, its steel mills. The world's money still flowed through Europe, and the U.S. was merely its eager apprentice. At that time, America imported more than it exported. The British pound was the currency of global trade, while the U.S. dollar was just a domestic note. Most American companies focused inward on local markets, not foreign ones. And yet, beneath the surface, something powerful was building. The United States possessed vast natural resources: coal, iron, oil, endless farmland. Farmers produced more than Americans could eat. Factories adopted new machines, and in Detroit, a man named Henry Ford changed the world with a moving assembly line. For the first time, cars could be built cheaply for the average family. Immigrants poured in by the millions from Italy, Ireland, Poland, and beyond, seeking work, a home, and a chance at the American dream. They built the roads, the bridges, the factories, and unknowingly, they built the foundation of what would become the wartime economy. By 1914, when the Great War erupted in Europe, Washington still viewed it as a distant storm. Most Americans thought it would pass, a conflict of kings and old empires. But within months, the shock waves reached across the Atlantic. Europe's factories shut down. Men were sent to the front lines, and suddenly, the world turned to America for help. Britain and France began ordering everything: grain, steel, meat, clothing, machinery. Ships left American ports loaded to the brim, and the U.S. economy surged like never before. Yet the most dramatic shift was in finance. European nations began selling their U.S. assets to pay for the war, and for the first time in history, money started flowing from Europe to America. Quietly, almost invisibly. The balance of power in global finance began to tilt. The dollar was gaining strength, and the United States, once a borrower, was becoming a lender to the world. By 1916, even before a single American soldier had set foot in Europe, the U.S. economy was already at war. 1917. President Woodrow Wilson stood before Congress and declared, "The world must be made safe for democracy." After 3 long years of neutrality, the United States entered the Great War, and with that decision, the nation unleashed the full power of its economy. War demanded everything: steel, ships, planes, food, fuel, and time. Factories that once built cars now produced tanks. Toy companies made parts for artillery. Textile mills stitched uniforms instead of suits. America became a giant machine, working without sleep. To coordinate this industrial storm, the government created the War Industries Board. It decided who produced what, how much, and for whom. For the first time, Washington directed not only the army, but the entire economy. Competition gave way to cooperation. Private companies worked together like never before. Oil, steel, and rail industries became the arteries of a single purpose: victory. And then came the other revolution: women. As millions of men went overseas, women filled the empty factories, offices, and workshops. They operated lathes, managed ledgers, repaired engines, and drove trucks. Posters called to them, "Women of America, your country needs you." They answered that call and changed the nation forever. Detroit, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, these cities pulsed day and night. Trains thundered with cargo, ships crowded the ports, and for every soldier in Europe, there were hundreds of workers at home. But the boom had a price. Inflation soared, shortages spread. To keep order, the government created the Food Administration, asking citizens to ration their meals and save grain for the troops. People planted victory gardens, walked instead of driving, and learned to live with less because sacrifice had become a form of patriotism. This was no longer just a war of armies. It was a war of workers, farmers, engineers, and families. A war fought with steel, sweat, and belief. By 1918, American production had multiplied several times over. Ships, planes, fuel, and weapons flowed endlessly across the Atlantic. The United States had become the arsenal of democracy, a title it would carry again decades later. And even before the fighting ended, one truth was clear. The world had just witnessed the birth of industrial America. War is not only fought with bullets, but with money. By 1917, the United States faced a new question: how to pay for a conflict that cost billions each month. Before the war, America's federal budget was small, taxes were low, and national debt modest. But now the nation was arming millions, building fleets, supplying allies, and keeping factories alive around the clock. President Woodrow Wilson and Treasury Secretary William McAdoo understood the challenge. If America could not finance this war, it could not win it. Their answer came in two words: Liberty Bonds. The government asked its own people to invest in victory. Citizens could buy bonds lending their savings to the nation, and in return, they would be repaid with interest. From farmers to bankers, from school children to factory workers, millions stepped forward. Posters shouted, "Buy a bond, back our boys." It wasn't just economics. It was patriotism in action. Hollywood stars like Charlie Chaplin and Mary Pickford toured the country, performing before huge crowds, turning every purchase into an act of pride. By the end, Americans had raised more than $20 billion, a staggering sum for its time. But bonds were only part of the story. The government also changed the way it collected money. For the first time, the income tax became a central pillar of federal finance. Before the war, only the rich paid a small share. Now, everyone contributed. The higher you earned, the more you gave. The logic was simple: we fight together, we pay together. Business profits were also taxed. A special excess profits tax targeted companies that grew rich from war contracts. People believed no one should get wealthy from the suffering of others. Across the country, new tax offices opened. Citizens filed declarations, learned what it meant to owe not just money, but responsibility to their nation. And this, perhaps, was the true legacy. The war taught Americans that economic strength wasn't only measured in factories or gold, but in unity, discipline, and trust. By the time peace arrived, the United States national debt had multiplied tenfold. Yet its credit, its reputation had never been higher. Europe now owed billions to America. The financial center of gravity had shifted across the Atlantic. The US dollar began to rival the British pound, and Wall Street replaced London as the beating heart of world finance. The Great War had done more than reshape borders. It had rewritten the world's balance of power in America's favor.